Perhaps one of the most profound quotes that I've heard about teaching recently is by Loris Malaguzzi. The aim of teaching is not to produce learning, but to produce the conditions for learning. This is the focal point, the quality of learning. And I have to relate that to my context when you think of the routines of connecting and extending and challenging students and even myself. To really think about what it means to even produce the conditions for learning, to produce the conditions wherein you can connect with the student, you can extend the knowledge that they already have. Because we know our students don't come in as blank slates. They come in with prior knowledge and opinions and thoughts and so forth. So how can we extend that? How can I extend that as an educator? And also, how can I challenge them to move forward? So in the past few weeks, as we've been going through the various lessons, I've had to really consider what that means in my context. And my context being an educator in junior high schools within Chicago, and also working for a nonprofit where I teach in an after-school program. And I'm a director of a female mentorship organization. Those are very dynamic roles that I play, especially being in Chicago, of all places. Chicago, now the murder capital of the United States, and living in the 13th most dangerous neighborhood or community within that city. There's so much that comes along with that. And as I think about our students living these nested lives that we spoke of, with their academic worlds and their social worlds and the cyber worlds mixing together, how can I produce a condition, produce the right conditions for the quality of learning when so much is going on within my students' lives? And so I've really had to challenge myself with that. And I even looked at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, dealing with how we all need our physiological needs met. You know, there's a need for breathing, you know, for food, for water, for sleep, for homeostasis, excretion, all of these things that need to be met before we can move to the next level. And that next level being safety, dealing with security of body, employment resources, morality, family, health, property. And in my context, that need is missing very much with my students. And so I find it challenging at times to create the type of environment where I can extend their knowledge, because they are seeking the basic needs, safety needs, and they travel between the safety needs and the needs for love and belonging not being met. When you have different family issues, in my community, 47% of the men have been incarcerated for felonies. Only 3% of the men in this community graduate from college. About 28% graduate from high school. So the basic need is not education here. The basic desire is to not be educated. The basic desire is to survive. And so I've really had to think through, what does it mean to connect and extend and to challenge with my students. And so what I am thinking of, or what I feel like is working, is connecting honestly with where the students are. And there is a need not to connect with the students in that I make the low standards, I make them seem more glorious than they are, but where I show the true depravity of our community to the students, where I let them know the statistics that I've just shared with you, and then also share statistics about what happens to our young men and our young women after they've been incarcerated. How can they meet certain safety needs, such as the need to have certain resources like a home or money for food and so forth. How can they meet those? How difficult is it to meet those needs if they've been incarcerated? How difficult is it to meet those needs if they become pregnant teens? And so part of my job is to connect their desire for these safety needs, and to show that the things in this community, like selling drugs and violence and so forth, in the long run won't feed the needs that they believe they have. And so I'm finding that as I use that to connect, as I use those certain things to connect with the basic needs that they have and the things they see around them and their hopes for continued security, and showing them that, hey, the route around you isn't going to work, that that establishes a groundwork. And from that point forward, my goal is to extend their views to from just seeing the depravity in our community to also see the hope, to see that there are people within our community who are graduating. There are people within that 3% of men who have graduated, who have gone to college. There are women who have made it through without having 6 kids before their 25th birthday and having no husband. There are guys who can make it through and not be incarcerated, to find hope within the community, to find organizations that will help them along the way, to show them that, hey, they can have a future even here, where it seems like they're in the most depraved community. And to also, my goal is to also extend their views beyond the community. You have many people here who have lived here all of their lives. And some older people who never go without, out this community of North Lawndale and Chicago. So even traveling, we've taken our students to Africa, to South Dakota, to Missouri, to different places where they can see that there's more than just North Lawndale in Chicago. And so once they see that, everything isn't hard, life doesn't have to be difficult, there is a better way to make money. There are legal ways to make money that they can do it as African American students. Then my goal is to challenge them to live above the depravity that they see. Not only to excel, the challenge isn't to excel and get out of this community. The challenge isn't to just do well in your classes and leave as soon as you can, but the challenge becomes to do well in your classes, go off to school, become successful career men and career women, and then come back and help others do the same thing. To be modern day Harriet Tubmans and Mother Teresa's and so forth, that serve their communities to change the statistics within the community. And so when I think of connecting and extending and challenging, it's much more than just math or science or anything else. Is much deeper. It's allowing my students to see where they're living, to extend their views beyond just that, to see something better, to desire something better, to look for the good within their community, and then challenging them to be the good within their community. And so to create the communities within their nested lives that promote that challenge. How can you put yourself in a school that's going to promote you to have consistent positive growth in your education? How can you create a social circle? How can you find the 3% or the 28% within the North Lawndale community in Chicago to help promote positive growth in your attitude and in your relationships? And how can you friend and follow the people, even in the cyber world, to help promote this idea of living above the depravity that they see? Sometimes the bar is so low here in the community that we say you can trip over it. So how do they raise the bar for themselves when the community isn't asking them to. And so my job is to create those conditions for learning, to provide a place where our students can come safely, to provide food when it's needed. We give meals, we provide dinner every day. If a student needs clothes, how can I find clothes? How can I help their family get food in any way? Because those create the conditions that I need for the quality of learning that I'm seeking. So that's what I consider when I think about connecting, extending, and challenging my students.